After spending some time with it, I thought it might be helpful to share what I have noticed so far. This is the kind of generator I look at when I want a real backup plan for a house, not just something to top off a phone or run a couple lights. I used it with the mindset of, if the power is out for a while, what do I actually need running to stay comfortable and keep food from going bad? If you are in that situation, or you have a place where outages happen a few times a year, this unit makes sense. It is also relevant if you want one generator that can run on gasoline or propane, because that changes how you store fuel and how you deal with long outages. The dual fuel part is what makes it interesting in day-to-day use. I like having the option. Gasoline is easy to find, but it gets stale and it is messy. Propane stores cleanly, and it is simpler to keep around if you already use propane for a grill or heaters. In my own use, I ended up reaching for propane more often than I expected, mostly because it felt less annoying. It also started and ran consistently for me on propane, and I did not have to think about carburetor issues the same way I do with gasoline generators that sit for long periods. Physically, it is big and heavy. When I moved it the first time, I immediately treated it like something I do not want to lift. I rolled it instead. The wheel and handle setup made that doable on flat ground, like a driveway or garage floor, but I still had to take my time. Over rough ground it takes some effort, and getting it up a step is not something I would want to do alone. The frame feels solid, and it has that thick, utilitarian look. It is not something you hide in a corner and forget. It takes up space, and you plan around it. On the control panel, the layout is straightforward once you spend a few minutes with it. The main thing I cared about was having a clear way to start it, see what it is doing, and plug in the loads I actually use. It has a screen that shows live information like voltage and frequency and run time. I ended up checking that screen more than I thought I would, because it is an easy way to confirm the generator is behaving normally after you add a big load. The electric start is what I used most of the time. When you are dealing with an outage, it is nice to push a button instead of yanking a cord repeatedly. It also has a pull start, and I am glad it is there because batteries do not last forever. I did try the pull start just to see how it felt. It was not terrible, but with a generator this size, I still prefer the electric start. One real-life note, you do need to pay attention to the battery switch if you want the electric start to behave the way you expect. If you forget that, you can waste a minute thinking something is wrong when it is really just a switch position. Setup was not complicated, but it is not something I would rush. Out of the box, I had the usual basics included, like a funnel and a small tool kit and the hose for propane. I added oil, then I took a minute to look over everything I could reach. I always do that with generators because shipping can loosen things, and I want to catch anything obvious before it is running. Once I fueled it and started it, I let it run with light load for a bit and watched for anything strange, like surging, stumbling, or weird smells beyond the normal break-in smell. Connecting propane was easy. I did not need extra tools. The hose connection felt like what I expect on this kind of equipment, and it sealed up fine for me. There is a fuel selection knob that lets you choose gasoline or propane. Over multiple uses, I did have one small annoyance. The plastic top on the selector knob did not hold up perfectly. It loosened and eventually popped off during normal turning. The knob still worked, so it did not stop me from using the generator, but it is the kind of thing that makes the unit feel a little less tidy. I contacted support and they were responsive about replacing the part. That is not me excusing it. It is just the reality of what happened in my use. For powering things, I tried it two ways. One was plugging appliances directly into the outlets. The other was running it through a generator inlet to feed household circuits with the proper interlock and breaker setup. If you are planning to back up a home, I strongly prefer the inlet approach, because it is cleaner and safer than a bunch of extension cords everywhere. With the higher capacity outlet, I was able to feed my panel and run the things I actually care about, like refrigeration, lighting, internet equipment, and some small kitchen loads. I also tested it with heavier loads that have compressors cycling on and off. That is where a generator can feel either stable or frustrating. In my case, it handled the cycling without drama. When a compressor kicked on, I could hear the engine respond, and then it settled back down. Noise is what it is with an open-frame generator. I am not going to pretend it disappears into the background. It is loud enough that placement matters. I kept it outside, away from doors and windows, and I paid attention to where the exhaust was going. If you are thinking about using something like this in a tighter neighborhood, you will want to be respectful about hours and distance. For me, the sound was manageable, but I would not call it quiet. Fuel use depends heavily on what you are running. I did not measure it with lab precision, but I did pay attention to how often I had to think about refueling. With propane, it was very predictable, and I liked knowing I could swap tanks without spills. With gasoline, you get a little more output available, and it can make sense if you need every bit of starting power. The trade-off is dealing with gasoline storage and making sure you are not letting it sit too long. In day-to-day operation, I appreciated having multiple outlet types on the front because it let me run a mix of loads without adapters. The breakers and indicator lights were also useful. I had one moment where I pushed the load too fast, too soon, and the generator reminded me to slow down and add things more deliberately. Once I approached it like a real backup system and not a stress test, it was consistent. Now, one point I want to clear up because people ask about it. This generator is not about fancy software. There is no mobile app experience here that changes how you live with it. What you do get is practical feedback on the panel, and that was enough for me. The screen gave me the confidence that voltage and frequency were where they should be, and runtime tracking helped me keep a simple maintenance rhythm. Reliability so far has been good. Starts have been consistent, especially on propane. The unit feels like it is built to do work, but it is still a machine that needs basic care. You need to stay on top of oil, let it warm up, and not run it in a way that invites trouble. The size and weight also mean you should think about storage and security. If you leave it outside, you are going to want to plan for weather protection and theft prevention, and you will want to practice moving it before you are doing it in the dark during a storm. Overall, my impression is that this is a practical choice for someone who wants one generator that can realistically support a home during an outage, and who likes the flexibility of propane and gasoline. The strengths are the amount of usable power, the option to feed a panel through a proper inlet, the electric start, and the simple, readable information on the front. The limitations are the weight, the normal noise level of this style of generator, and small durability details like that fuel selector knob cap that I wish was more robust. If you are thinking about this one, I would also say this. The generator is only half the story. The other half is your setup, like using a correct inlet, correct breakers, and safe placement outside. Once that part is handled, using it is pretty straightforward. You roll it into position, connect your fuel, connect your power cable, start it, let it stabilize, then bring loads on in a controlled way. That is basically how I used it, and it did what I needed it to do. To learn more about the DuroMax XP13000EH, a dual-fuel portable generator 13,000 watt, please check the comments section. Thank you for watching.